What's up, gang? It's Andrea, and I'm back with another Bible story. Okay, y'all. So I got a good story for us today that's coming out of the book of Judges, chapter 11. I have been reading this story. I heard about it before, and then I read it for myself. And I thought it was just such a great story to tell on our first Sunday with Back with Another Bible Story. So let's get into this story. So I'm going to tell y'all a story about a man in Judges, chapter 11, named Jephthah. He was a warrior, an outcast, and a man with something to prove. So he's been asked to lead Israel into a battle with the Ammonites. But before he marches in a battle, he makes a vow, and a dangerous one at that. So this is what he asks God. If you would give me the Ammonites into my hands, he says to God, whatever comes out the door of my house to meet me when I return in peace, I will offer up as a burnt offering. Now let us just let that settle for a minute. He wins, the battle is his, and he returns home in triumph. But then guess who comes out the door to greet him when he returns? His daughter. And it's his only child. She comes out dancing, singing, and celebrating that her dad is home. And just like that, that vow became a curse. She was the first to come out the door. And Jephthah tears his clothes in grief. And he says, you have brought me very low, for I have opened my mouth to the Lord, and I cannot take back the vow that I gave. And then she says to him, Dad, if you promised it to the Lord, do what you promised. Just give me time to mourn. All right, so what happens next is debated because it doesn't explicitly say that he killed her or he offered her up to sacrifice. But also we know of the law of Moses in Leviticus and in Deuteronomy, human sacrifice was condemned. So it was kind of debated as, did he offer her up as a burnt sacrifice or did he not? And then some say that he sent her to live a life of service, like to God, to the Lord, alone and unmarried. So that was another debate. And I feel like that was the case because when she said to him, do what you promised, God, just let me mourn. She was saying, just give me some days to mourn because she was mourning her life. She knew that not that her life was over, but that she would not be able to get married or anything. She was offered to service to God for the rest of her life. So we don't know if he put her on the altar and offered her up as sacrifice or she lived the rest of her life in solitude. But either way, he lost her. And these are 3 lessons that we can learn from this story. Lesson number 1, be careful what you promise in desperation. Jephthah didn't need to make a vow. God had already promised him that Israel will be delivered. But like so many of us, he felt like he needed to make a deal. We do this, don't we? Like, God, if you do this for me, I'll give you this. But faith isn't a transaction. When we try to bargain with God, we risk offering up something or someone we should never put on the altar. Lesson number 2, religious zeal without wisdom is dangerous. Jephthah was passionate, but he was also reckless. He believed that he was honoring God, but his actions led to irreversible harm. We see this even today when people commit harm in the name of faith, convinced that they're doing what's right. But faith without compassion is cruelty, and zeal without understanding can destroy lives. And last but not least, lesson number 3, think before you speak, especially when it matters most. His words couldn't be unsaid. A vow made impulsively became a life-altering decision. How many of us have spoken out of pressure, fear, or pride, only to regret it when it's too late? Words matter, and the cost of careless ones can be devastating. The story of Jephthah isn't clean. It's messy, it's painful, and it's morally complex. There's no miracle to save his daughter, no divine intervention, just silence and grief. But maybe the silence says something too. Maybe it reminds us that not all victories are worth the price. That sometimes the greatest tragedy isn't the war outside, but the promise made inside our own home. Sometimes it's not the enemy that destroys us, but the vow that we make trying to win. What are the things that you're willing to sacrifice trying to get ahead? What are the promises that you're making out of fear, pride, and pressure? And most importantly, who might suffer because of those things? Jephthah's daughter had to make a sacrifice herself. She had to go along with the promise that her father made to God, that vow that he made to God. We don't know, and the story doesn't really tell us or go on to say what happened to her and how it happened. So we know that in the law of Moses, sacrificing a human was inhumane and it was condemned. So we would like to think that no, she wasn't put up on an altar and offered as a burnt offering. But also when she said that, Father, go ahead and make good on the promise that you gave God, just let her mourn a couple days, meaning she knew that her life was going to be going in a different direction than she had planned. So now her life was dedicated to God. She wasn't going to get married. She wasn't going to have a life. She wasn't going to have children. She was offered as a sacrifice because of her father's careless promise that he made to God. He didn't even stop to think what he was doing. He just went ahead and did it out of fear, impulsiveness. It was I wouldn't say a tragedy, but it was very unfortunate. However, the daughter did go on to live a life dedicated to God, but everything that she had planned for herself, to be married, to have children, that was all gone because of a promise that her father made to God. And I know some might say, because when I was reading, I was like, okay, well, it's not that bad. You were being sacrificed to live a life dedicated to God. That couldn't be so bad. But that means that she would have to be lonely. She would not have companionship. She would not go on to have children. And although to some people that may not sound too bad, but I believe this girl was young. Like she was, it doesn't say how old she is, but in the Bible, it seems to be that she was very young. And so her whole life now was gone because of something careless that her father promised. And if you think about it, she was kind of like how we would think of it now. She was going to be a nun, pretty much. So, yeah. But that's the story, y'all. All right. Thanks for listening to Back with Another Bible Story. And if this story moved you, like it, share it, reflect on it, and let this remind you that sometimes the hardest part of faith is learning when to stay silent. Until next time, peace.